I am muted. Yay! Shall I do that again? It's the big red button wasn't a clear enough indication that I was muted. Anyway.
Go to TAPgiles.com to learn dreams, engage my services, and support the channel.
This is part of the MM's charity stream for accessibility and one special day. So I made this scene. I got these things from the Dreamverse, which is really cool. I've got some nice rolling hills and like a train. I can move around and jump and sprint with R2 and stuff. Whee! And then there was a lever.
Remember, don't pull the red lever.
Dum dum dum. And now I look around again and I see a red lever but also a green lever. So maybe I should pull the green one. Dum dum dum. I can open that now. And that exits the scene. Which just goes back to edit mode. Yeah, and this is our little scene. Big thanks to Demaray for the scenery, and Usual Suspect 45 for the train scene, and Fortnite and Finley TDM. Now I'm going to do some accessibility to it. I'm going to add some accessibility features. So I've actually made an accessibility settings menu here that you can just import. Boop. I'll release this accessibility settings menu so that anyone can use it on the Dreamverse, and you can start making your Dreams game more accessible. And I've already got some stuff set up to wire in for some of the features. There we go. Oh look, there's a random... So this menu is like an actual physical thing, obviously. So normally you'd probably want to hide this stuff away, like under your scene or something. And you should be able to scale it down and it should work fine. Yeah, so it's still working. And all this is doing is kind of zooming into a camera on that menu. It doesn't pause the game. Pausing a game, the game itself, is very difficult. There's no easy way of doing it. So it doesn't do anything to the game. So if you want something to happen, like for mine, while I'm in the menu and out of the menu, I turn different things off, like the audio for the train. Where is it? Over here. So this audio turns off while I'm in the menu, so it's not still loud and stuff. And things like disabling the controls on the puppet so that you can't run around while you can't see anything. And when I'm out of the menu, I'll show a prompt. Hey! So now it shows accessibility menu on the touchpad. So now I push the touchpad and we see the menu. Oh, menus. And if we go down here,
Menu text to speech. Speech off. One more option. Use left and right on the D-pad to change a setting, and up and down on the D-pad to move to a different setting.
oh, so like because that's the menu text to speech, it always says the thing.
Menu text to speech. Speech
but then
on.
I can
speech,
change
speech
stuff.
on. Speech
and
off.
It works.
Menu
But
text to speech.
If the speech is on, then it says the other thing.
Menu text speech on. One more option. Sprint. Hold R2 to sprint. One more option. Tap R2 to toggle sprint. One more option. Hold
So I've
R2
got,
to sprint. One more option.
these
Look up and down.
different
More
things.
accessibility options can be found in your preferences. No options. Use left and look up and control. Menu text speech.
So I'm going to be implementing these things basically. And so we've got more accessibility options, just like because some players might not know that there are accessibility options built into Dreams. So the rumble strength and the camera shake and motion blur can be reduced, and the music, sound effects and voice volumes can be adjusted, and the subtitles can be turned on. So I'll do the subtitles first because that's the easiest one. So pause and go My Preferences. And now if we go to the audio and then subtitles, we can turn on subtitles. So that's for the player to do if they like subtitles to be working for them, or they can't understand the spoken word so well, then this can help them. And then we can exit the menu and walk around. But I haven't actually got any subtitles yet. If we go here,
Remember, don't pull the red lever.
so we've got that, but that doesn't have any subtitles. So let's add some subtitles. And there's a timeline. That's where the speech comes from.
Remember,
So let's add some subtitles. So in Dreams, you can go to Gadgets, and then Move as an Output, and there's a Subtitles displayer. And this will take some text, so just put in our text in there. Let's remind ourselves of what I even say.
remember, don't pull the red lever.
So remember, don't pull the red lever or lever, depending on how you talk. Cool. So now if I play that,
Remember,
it shows the subtitles. But if the player has subtitles turned off, and you play that,
remember,
then it won't show.
Don't pull.
So I can just make that last the same length like that, and turn the subtitles on again. Cool. So now when I play, and I'll run over here and use that one.
Remember, don't pull the red lever.
Cool. So that's just one of the accessibilities built into Dreams. So what else have we got? Look up and down. So there's regular and invert Y. So regular is like you push down on the right stick, push the right stick down, and it looks down, and push the right stick up, and it looks up. Whereas invert Y means it would go the other way around. So yeah, so how do we actually get stuff from this menu? It actually uses variables. So use these variable modifiers to get the player's settings. So I'll grab those. It's just a group. Scope it out, and I'll move over to my character here, and then ungroup them. So which one are you looking for? Look up and down. So if it's on 0, you can remember in the menu, like the leftmost one is 0, and then it counts up from there. So regular is 0 and invert Y is 1. Cool. So let's put that in here. So this rig is a first-person puppet rig that I made a little while back, and it has a little input for invert Y. So if we just wire that into there, now it'll use that setting. So let's go to play mode, and down looks down, and then if we change it to invert Y and go back out, then down looks up, because of how I've set up the logic for how the looking around works for this puppet. So not all camera rigs will have that feature built into it and easily accessible, but if you make a camera rig, then it's a good idea to have that so that people can easily wire into it their own setting or whatever to make it nice and easy. Let's go put that on regular, and now it's back to normal. Next is the control scheme. So this would obviously probably be changed for whatever you do in your game, however the player controls stuff. But in this game, I've just got X to jump and square to interact. But we could change that to R1 to jump and L1 to interact, because sometimes players find it difficult to use the face buttons and things like that. So let's try that. So that's called control scheme over here, and I have the buttons in here. So let's put it in there. So currently we've got square going into interact and X going into jump. So if we have another controller sensor and we just turn that one off, then we can say R1 to jump and L1 to interact. That's cool. Right. There we go. And now go like here. So now X doesn't jump. I'm pressing X. And R1 does jump. And when I go over here, it still says square, but if I press L1, then it does the thing. So now we want to change these like button prompts in here. So let's go in here. So I've kind of split this out so that it's easily accessible, this other text displayer. So if we have another one that says L1 instead, then it will show that. If we wire that into the same ports like that, and then we just turn that one off. So now instead of showing square, that one's off, this one's on, so it will show L1. So just check if that's working. So it's showing the right one. So that works, but we want this stuff to only happen if you're actually in that other mode. So again, this is sending a 0. While it's sending a 0, that's on the default mode, so we'll use that one. When it's sending a 1, we want to use this other controller sensor. For that, let's get a selector gadget in logic and processing. And we get the selector. And then, so with a selector, you can send it a number. So if you just have a value slider and wire in to the active port, then if it's sending a 0, it's setting the active port to 0, which is the first one, which is A. And then if this is sending a 1, it will set active port to 1, and it will set it to B. So that same thing will happen from this value here. So we just wire that in there. And now when a port is active, then it will send a signal, so we can use that signal to power different controller sensors. So currently it's on the first channel, so that one's being powered. And because it's on the first channel, the other channels won't send a signal. So anything they are wired into won't be powered. There you go. So this is it with the first option. And then if I go and change it to the second option, and then come out into edit mode again. Oh, let me just do that. Now that's sending a 1, so B is powered, and it's powering this other controller sensor setup. So let's just test that and make sure that's working. So X to jump, and then if we change it to this other control scheme, and then X doesn't do anything, and R1 jumps instead. So that's working. Cool, but also we wanted the that text box to change. So if I just pin that to the screen. So normally we want that one on and that one off. If we're in this mode, we want to change that. So I'm going to use a keyframe in the animate section. We can get a keyframe and place it somewhere, and then it will start recording into that keyframe. So any changes you make to like settings or moving stuff around, that will be recorded into here. So if we turn that off and turn that on, now this keyframe has remembered that change. And then if we turn this keyframe on, it'll apply that change. So while this keyframe is powered, it will show L1 instead of the square prompt. So when do we want that to be powered? We want that to be powered when we're in this mode again, in that alternate control scheme mode. Right, so it's showing square, and if I go and change it to the other control scheme, it's showing L1. Yay! And then L1 does the thing.
Don't pull the red lever.
Next in our menu, we have sprint. And by the way, these changes, when you make a change, because I'm using variables to remember what settings the player has, they're actually persistent variables. So if you then change to a different scene or you leave the game and come back, these settings will be remembered for them. Right, so we've got sprint. So currently we have it on hold R2 to sprint, but that can be, if you're in a game that has a mechanic like that where you hold a button or whatever, it can be kind of tiring to hold that button for a long time. And for some people, holding a button for a long time can hurt they start getting pain in their joints and things like that. And I am one of those people, in fact. So tap R2 to toggle sprinting instead is a useful feature. So let's go and add that. And that is called sprint. So let's pull that in. I've got this other chip called sprint. So let's put it in there. So how is this working currently? We have a keyframe that's changing some stuff on the puppet and that, which activates sprint mode. And when does this happen? So we've got a sprint button here, which is connected to R2, coming out through here and then coming out here. And then when we are pulling R2 0.27 of the way, or 27% of the way, then this triggers. So this is where it's coming from, this R2. This R2 is being piped into there, and it goes up as I pull R2. And when it's past this amount, then it sends a signal out of the result because it's greater than that amount. And then that powers the keyframe, as we talked about before. The keyframe applies its settings, and that's how we get to sprint. We want to change that so that we toggle that on and off instead of it just being on and off while we're holding the R2. So let's just make the toggle first. So when we get to this point, we want to activate a toggle. So let's go to gadgets and logic and processing again, and the signal manipulator gadget. So this has, if you tweak that with L1 and square, this has a load of different settings and a whole ton of settings in this tab, but we don't have to worry about most of it. Just look down in the edge mode and it's got toggle output at on. So when it receives a new signal from this threshold calculator, then it will toggle it on. And then when it receives a new press from this threshold calculator, it will toggle it off. With time running, if I push R2, we've got to wire it in like that. Then I push R2, and now it's toggled on, and you can see it. The output over here is black. That means it's toggled on, and then R2 to toggle it off, on and off, and then that should power this keyframe as well. So basically, we'd want to block this wire from powering it, and instead use this. To do that, we can use a node gadget. So we just place it here, and this is how you get things like a node coming out of the side of it, a port. But if we tweak it and turn it onto no port mode, then it won't have that coming out of the outside of it, and it will just be in here for logic. So all a node does is it takes a wire going into it and sends the same value going out of it. So nothing particularly interesting, but the thing is, we can turn that node off. And now, when we pull R2, the signal's going to the node, but it's not coming out of the node, so it's not doing anything to the keyframe. But this toggle is now toggling it on and off. And I'm just tapping R2 to do that. So now in here, I can just tap R2, and now I'm just running everywhere. Whoa! And then I tap R2, and now I'm walking everywhere. So that's working properly. But we want to make that change only when this is sending the fact that we've set it to that second option, which again will be sending a 1 instead of a 0. So we use a selector again. wire it into the active port. And on the default mode, we want the node to work. On the toggle mode, we want the toggling signal manipulator to work. Cool, so now let's try that. So holding R2 lets us sprint normally, and then we change it to tap R2 to toggle, and now we are like toggling it on, toggling it off, and I'm not holding R2 to have to be able to sprint everywhere. Cool, that's the sprint done. Now what's next?
Menu text to
speech. Reticule. So we have the options for off, dot and circle. So let's have a look at that. So that's actually the simplest setup, because all the reticle is like an image on the screen. So currently we have no reticle at all. We have no dot in the center. So people can find that like disconcerting, or they can find it difficult to know where they are actually pointing, like the middle of their camera. So let's add a reticle to help that. So gadgets, and we can use a text displayer and tweak it, and now we can set the text we want. So some people use a full stop. I tend to use a icon called UI sphere. Oh, yeah, sphere. There we go. And it's just a circle basically. And then we can put that in the center of our screen, and we don't want a background or anything. And normally these are white like that, and we can make it a bit smaller, I think. Yeah, that'll do. So now that just sits on the screen when we go into play mode. So now I have a reticle in the center of the screen, and we can like make it transparent if we want by lowering the opacity like that, so it's less bright and stuff like that. Pretty easy. We also want a circle one, so if I go and use a different icon, UI sub sphere, then that is the same circle, but it's not filled in basically. So I'll make that a bit bigger, I think. All I'm doing is hovering over the gizmo, and then using up on the D-pad to make that larger. There we go. I don't really know how common it is to have a circle reticle, but you can obviously change this to do whatever you want. So now we turn that one off, and now we've got a circle reticle. Yay! And you can learn all these icon codes or look them up by going to tapgiles.com/icons, and there's a whole icons guide, and they all link to each other and have keywords you can search the page for. But we want certain ones of these to actually work at a time, not all of them at the same time. So we get our reticle, variable modifier to read what that variable is. And what is that sending? Let's just show you by adding a number displayer like that. Cool, so it's showing a 0, but if and it's showing the reticle.
Menu.
And if I change that, it changes that to those different numbers. So 0, first one on the left, and then 1, and then 2. So 1 should be the dot, and 2 should be the circle. And the selector still works for the number 2, it's not just a 0 or 1 thing. So let's get a selector and wire it in. So just as with the menus, the first one is 0 and then 1, and we need 3 ports, so I'm going to change that. And then 2 will activate C, so 2 will be our circle. That's our circle there. And then 1 will be our dot, like that. And then 0 won't do anything. It just won't power one of these reticles. So we just leave that as it is. Oh, because it's powered off. So these will have to be powered on because it's using this to tell it whether to display or not. It's just a minor thing. So now we don't have a reticule because by default it's off. Reticule turns on the dot, and you can actually see the dot now because we're not preventing it from displaying while we're in the menu. I'll show you how to do that. And then circle. So off, dot and circle are working, and then we have that reticule. So to prevent this from doing stuff while we're in the menu, what we can do is put it into a chip. A chip is kind of like a group, so when you like group stuff up together, these are all like different objects, but it's in one group. So then you can move the whole group around. And the same with a chip. Now I can move the whole chip around and all that stuff will come with it. But also you can turn the chip off. So I'm tweaking the chip, turning it off, and now none of this stuff will happen. And that's what we want to happen when we're not out of the menu. And there is a out of menu node over here, so we can go like that and power this so that it only works when you're out of the menu. So let's try that. Let's change it to dot, and it's not showing yet. So let's set it to dot and then come out of the menu. And now we've got the dot, yay! And go to the circle and back to off, and that's all working. Yeah, now I should look. What's the next one to look at? Colorblind mode. So we have off and we have patterned. Let's have a look at what problem people can have if they're colorblind. In edit mode, you go to show and hide and then turn on color blindness filters, and it has all these color blindness types in here, so you can kind of if you are not colorblind, then you can kind of understand what it's like to play your game with these different conditions. So I'll put it on this one, for example, and as I look around in edit mode, it works, but also go to play mode from edit mode and it still works. So that's cool. So everything has kind of a yellow tint to it, and now it's pretty much impossible to tell which one is red and which one is green. And that is why we want to like add a specific pattern to it so the player can kind of learn what these different patterns mean. And we got a variable modifier for that, colorblind mode. So this will affect what those levers look like. Where are they? They're over here. Let's go over here and give it a different icon. Oh, let's actually do it on the green one first. So I'm just scoping into the group, and now this group, if I go hide everything else, right, so we scope into the handle and we've got these text displayers, and they're just putting on like a grunge effect to kind of add some texture to it, and that's just using the like texture mode stuff going on over here. This sticker mode, which I'm using here to splat the texture onto the sculpt. But what we're going to do is add an icon on here, so it's not just textured, but it has an icon. And I chose the icon UI anim sustain, as in animation sustain mode, as you might see on some buttons around the tweak menus and stuff. And then click done, and now it shows these nice chevrons on it. And I'll do the same thing on here. Cool, and that will show on the other side, like that. So now when we play, we are seeing these chevrons, and the earlier in the game maybe we kind of indicate that the chevrons mean a good thing, and we can have a different icon to mean a bad thing. And I couldn't come up with anything reasonable, so I'm going with the classic poop emoji. Yay! And that shows on the handle there, and put it on the back as well because you don't want to be left without enough poop. Yeah, so what we could do is just leave these patterns on at all times, and then it would just generally help people learn these good or bad things, or what these or what a particular pattern means and things like that, in terms of like a mechanical thing that an object does. So like this is handle shaped, so it means we can use it to flip the lever, but also it's got the chevrons on it, so it means that it's a good thing to flip the lever, something like that. So let's just like view that in the mode. So this is using sticker mode, so it just like splats the icon or the text or whatever onto the lever. But we've got a setting to turn these on and off, because sometimes it can like break immersion, or it's just not the thing you want to have happen. So let's do that. So for this, to hide the hide that icon, we can just turn the text opacity down to 0, and the background is on like a different tab, so that still shows the texture, but the icon is hidden. So let's just put that to 0, and same on here, and same with our poop emoji. And then in here, we'll use our trusty keyframe again to set it to have opacity again. So that becomes opaque, that becomes opaque, that becomes opaque, and that becomes opaque. Cool. And when do we want that to happen? When this is sending a 1. Because remember, the first option is 0 and the patterned one is 1. And anything powered by a 1 is like, that's the same as just powering it. So that's what we want to happen when we are powered, is we show the pattern or the icon. So we just wire that in and that should work. So now let's try changing it. So let's look at one of these. So it's just showing the texture, and then we change it to patterned mode, and now it's showing the pattern, and it's showing the poop emoji. Yay! And you don't want to flip the poop emoji lever, because bad things, and then you respawn. Oh yeah, and then finally we should actually test it in colorblind mode. That's a good idea. And then go back here. So again, they look pretty similar. They're just very slightly different shades of yellow, essentially. And then we change it to have patterned mode, and we can see the chevrons. Yay! And we can see the poop, or mainly just a couple of eyeballs staring at you. Cool. Dream shaping. This one, awesome accessibility. Hey, it's me! Cool. Yeah, there's all sorts of cool gadgets over here relating to accessibility and giving a better experience for your players. So a classic one is this PS4, PS4 Pro, PS5 detection thing, which I believe is from one of the Media Molecule people. And the way it does it is, it detects the hardware and says, "You got a PS5, yo!" Yay! So there's a variable inside here, PS detection, which sends a different number for those. So 4, 4.5, or 5. And then you can use that and say, what am I doing? If that is more than 4, which means they got a Pro or a PS5, then you can like have a keyframe that like turns some of the visual stuff off, or makes it looser so that it's cheaper to render and things like that. So it'll cause less frame drops and all that kind of stuff. If it's like emitting a ton of objects or a ton of like enemy characters or something like that, then maybe when you're on a PS5 that's fine, But if you're on a PS4, you want to limit that to only having a few of those in the scene at once. So then you could, so an emitter has settings down here for max emitted and max emitted at once and things. So then you could keyframe that to be lower if you're on less than a PS5 or something like that, and you just do that, and now that's changed your settings across the scene. Things like that.
Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something interesting. Go to patreon.com/TAPgiles to learn something new every day.